I was 62 years old when a strip of paper taped to my bedroom door told me exactly where I ranked in my own home. I had landed from a whirlwind trip to Chicago at 11:30 p.m., shoulders heavy from 3 days of negotiations that would bring my investment firm another $2 million in fees. The porch light was dark, even though I had texted my son Marcus about the delay. The front door was locked, but my key worked. Habit is strong when you have paid a mortgage for 15 years. The note on my bedroom door was written in a hurried hand. "Mom, you're in the guest room tonight. Juniper's parents arrived early. Thanks for understanding." Understanding. The word settled like frost. I opened the guest room and found bare walls, the floral bedspread gone, the dresser empty as a showroom. Looking for something, Juniper's voice floated from the hallway, saccharine and self-satisfied. Her hair was perfect, her silk pajamas the very set I had given her last Christmas. When I asked where my things were, she smiled and said, "The garage." I covered everything with plastic. Daddy's back is fragile, and Mommy is a light sleeper. They need the best room. She called my room Marcus's room now, as if marriage were a deed transfer, and I were a tenant who had overstayed a lease. I climbed to the converted office above the garage with my small suitcase and found my life buried under crinkling plastic. My mother's hand-sewn quilt smelled faintly of motor oil. The narrow cot under the sloped ceiling complained when I sat still, wearing the blazer I had worn to close a deal worth millions. From that cot, I could hear laughter in the house. I had bought the house where my son slept without asking where his mother would rest. Generosity had once felt like love. In that moment, it felt like a mistake. The irony was comic if it hadn't been cruel. A woman worth $5 million taking up temporary residence beside fertilizer and rakes because her daughter-in-law preferred her parents closer to the good china. Morning revealed intentions as clearly as noon sun. Juniper, floating through my kitchen in a robe the color of champagne, asked me without looking up to carry breakfast on my grandmother's bone china to her parents in what had been my bedroom. "They prefer breakfast in bed when they travel," she said, and waved toward a tray heavy with fruit arranged like museum petals. Upstairs, her father, a silver-haired man with a golfer's tan, glanced at me over the paper and said, "About time. We usually eat at 7 sharp." His wife adjusted her makeup in the mirror I had stood before for 15 years and murmured, "You can pick up the tray later. We don't like clutter." Invisible people could walk through walls. I moved through mine, carrying dishes. That night, the house shimmered with lights I had not approved and voices that had never asked my name. Juniper hosted a small crowd of Marcus's colleagues and their spouses, accepting compliments on her home and her exquisite taste with a glowing innocence that would have charmed a jury. I wore a black dress retrieved from a plastic-wrapped mound in the garage, the faint scent of gasoline threading the hem, and served champagne as if I were a rental with the stemware. When a woman in pearls admired the location, Juniper said, "We were very lucky. Sometimes the best opportunities fall into your lap." She laughed when someone mentioned previous owners and said, "An elderly woman lived here for decades. Very traditional." I stood 3 paces behind her and understood that in her script, I no longer existed. Juniper's mother, pausing at the kitchen door, assessed me with the brisk calm of a hotel inspector. "The service has been adequate," she announced. "Though the help is a bit old," Juniper called out cheerfully from the living room. "Oh, that's just Marcus's mother. She likes to feel useful. It gives her purpose." The words struck hard because they were not careless. They were crafted, positioned to sound kind while sanding my dignity to dust. I finished cleaning at nearly midnight, listening to the clink of glass and the closing of a front door I had paid to paint. The silence afterward felt like a dare. I took it. The next day, a list of tasks slid beneath my garage door in Juniper's neat cursive laundry, grocery run, meal prep, garden weeding car, washing, property maintenance. At the bottom, a smiley flourish. "Thanks for being such a sport. You're the best. I tucked the list into my purse next to the previous day's schedule and began to photograph everything my things beneath plastic. The cot, the garage window, view the dish-littered sink after the party, the chore list. I added timestamps, voice memos, and bank statements that told a very simple story. For 2 years, I had funded an illusion in which my son and his wife played landlord and lady, while I, the actual owner, was recast as aging help. I called my attorney that night at 11:15 p.m. and told him I was done being invisible. David had walked me through estate updates and real estate closings for 2 decades. He did not waste a breath. "The deed is in your name," he asked. "Only mine," I said. "Then you decide who lives there and under what terms," he replied. "I'll prepare 3 documents, confirmation of ownership, a 30-day notice to vacate, and a lease option at fair market rent. We'll let the letterhead do the talking." I ended the call and stared at the dark outline of my house. I had spent 2 years believing that peace meant swallowing small humiliations. That night, I learned that real peace begins when you stop feeding someone else's appetite with your self-respect. The documents waited in a manila envelope on my passenger seat the following Monday, heavy as a stone and twice as sharp. David had included comparable rentals to set the rent figure $4,000 a month, an amount Marcus could not cover with his salary alone. He had also slipped in a background report on Juniper. 2 bankruptcies, unpaid debts, a patchwork of short-term jobs and gaps, filled no doubt by whichever man happened to be paying the bills at the time. The timing of her most recent bankruptcy, 6 months before marrying Marcus, was not coincidence. I read the pages twice, anger hardening into resolve. Love had not brought her to my son. Convenience had. I chose noon for delivery when the house was quiet, and Juniper would be back from her errands. She opened the door with an easy smile and bags of expensive clothing swinging from her arms. "Is everything okay? You look serious?" she said, a faint wrinkle cutting her brow. I walked past her into my own living room and remained standing, the envelope in my hand. "There seems to be some confusion about who owns this house," I told her. Her fingers froze on the throw pillow she had been adjusting. I handed her the first document, the deed with only my name. "I have paid every mortgage, every tax, every insurance bill for 15 years. This is my property. You and Marcus have been my guests." I let her read the page until her face lost color. Then I laid down the 30-day notice. "You have until the end of the month to find another place. Or I place the lease agreement in front of her. You may stay as tenants at $4,000 a month plus utilities." Her voice cracked into panic. "We can't afford that." "Then you cannot afford to live here?" Her hands shook. "This is our home. Marcus grew up here. We've been living here 2 years. As my guests. Guests who have mistaken hospitality for ownership." She tried anger, then her voice rising shrill. "This is about my parents visiting, isn't it? You're throwing us out because I hurt your feelings." I opened my phone and pressed play. Her voice filled the room. "Oh, that's just Marcus's mother. She likes to feel useful. It gives her purpose." She paled, horrified. "You recorded me." "I documented abuse in my own home. Perfectly legal." Her shoulders sagged. "Where will we go?" "That's not my concern. You and Marcus are adults. 2 years of rent-free living should have left you with savings." She stammered about improvements and investments, but the silence after each excuse revealed the truth. Every chair, every rug, every nail hammered into a wall had come from my accounts. "Generosity should not be mistaken for weakness," I said quietly. "You have 30 days?" I left her in the chair where she had perched like royalty, now crumpled and stunned. By mid-afternoon, Marcus's car screeched into the driveway. He stormed into the garage apartment, red-faced and frantic. "Mom." "What is going on? Juniper says you're evicting us." I gestured to the chair. "Sit down, Marcus." He refused, pacing instead. "We've been here 2 years. We've been maintaining the property." "Maintaining. When was the last time you paid a bill? When did you contribute to taxes? utilities repairs. I showed him the banking app with 2 years of transactions all mine. His face fell. I thought you were saving for a house, I continued. This morning, your account held $1,200. Where did the rest go? Juniper likes nice things. She says we need to maintain an image for my career. Whose career? She hasn't worked a day since you married. He muttered about job hunting. I handed him the folder David had compiled. Your wife has declared bankruptcy, twice defaulted on credit cards, and never held a steady job. She didn't marry you for love, Marcus. She married you for stability and a house her mother-in-law owned. His hands trembled as he read. This can't be real. It's public record. You never asked because she said money wasn't romantic. His eyes brimmed with tears, the same boy I'd raised alone when his father left. I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't know. You didn't want to know, I said. It was easier to let her handle things, easier to let your mother sleep in a garage than confront the truth. He wept openly now. What do you want me to do? Grow up. Take responsibility. Decide what kind of man you are? He asked if the 30-day notice was real. I told him it was. He begged that they couldn't afford rent elsewhere. I told him Juniper would need to get a real job. What does she bring to this marriage besides expensive tastes and debt? I asked. His silence was answer enough. Then I delivered the last blow. I have changed my will. Everything now goes to charity. You are no longer my heir. He cried harder. Please, Mom, don't. This isn't punishment. It's protection. If you leave her, we will revisit. But do it because it is right, not for money. When he finally left, his steps were slow and heavy. I watched from the window as he re-entered the house, a man realizing he had built his life on sand. The real battle had just begun, but for the first time in years, I felt strong again. The next weeks were a storm of slammed doors, whispered phone calls, and Juniper's frantic attempts to rewrite the story in her favor. She tried everything, tears first dripping down her cheeks as she begged me to be reasonable, then threats about taking Marcus away forever. Then accusations to neighbors that I was unstable. She even called Adult Protective Services claiming I was too old to handle my finances and that my attorney was manipulating me. The investigator lasted one afternoon before realizing the truth. A 62-year-old woman who owned her home outright, managed millions in investments, and had been systematically exploited by a daughter-in-law who had never paid a dime. By day 15, the mask slipped completely. I came home from lunch with my neighbor Joan to find Juniper in my bedroom snapping photos of my jewelry box. She claimed it was for insurance purposes, but the way her eyes lingered on each piece told a different story. At your age, she said smoothly, it's important to document valuables. I changed every lock in the house that night. When Marcus came home, he had to choose move out with his wife or sleep in the car. To his credit, he followed me to the garage and admitted he was filing for divorce. It took him another week, but when the petition was served, Juniper's shriek could be heard down the block. The divorce was swift. Presented with records of her bankruptcies, recordings of her belittling comments, and her attempt to manipulate protective services, her attorney advised her to accept a small settlement, half of Marcus's modest savings, and nothing else. No alimony, no claim on my property, no inheritance. She left in a fury, her designer bags stuffed into the back of her father's car. The silence after her departure was the sweetest sound I had ever known. Marcus moved into a small apartment across town. He came to dinner twice in the months that followed, awkward and ashamed, trying to piece together how he had allowed himself to be so thoroughly manipulated. I thought keeping peace was the same as keeping love, he admitted one night over roasted chicken. I told him gently that peace built on someone else's humiliation isn't peace at all, it's surrender. He nodded, his eyes clearer than I had seen in years. Meanwhile, I began reclaiming my house piece by piece. I redecorated the master bedroom painting over the cold gray Juniper had insisted on with warm blues and greens that reminded me of the lake where I'd spent summers as a child. I converted Marcus's old room into an office, placing my desk in front of the window that overlooked the garden. Slowly, the house began to breathe again. The air felt lighter, as if toxicity had a scent that could finally dissipate. My neighbors, once distant after hearing Juniper's lies, trickled back. Joan invited me to lunch, and even Margaret, who had once believed Juniper's stories about me being difficult, apologized over soup and bread. Rebuilding trust took time, but it came. For the first time in years, I felt like part of a community instead of a prisoner in my own home. My financial life thrived too. My advisor confirmed a 12% growth in my portfolio, and I began planning donations. I gave generously to a shelter for women escaping financially abusive relationships, knowing too well the humiliation of being stripped of dignity, while others called it help. They sent me a bouquet of orchids with a note saying my gift would help 12 women and their children move into safe, independent housing. I set the flowers on my dining table, their color glowing in the sunlight that streamed through windows, finally free of pretense. Marcus continued therapy, trying to understand why he had ignored red flags. "She told me money wasn't romantic," he said during one dinner. "So I thought love meant never asking questions. I told him that true love doesn't fear questions, it answers them." He wept again, but this time not from shame, from the slow relief of clarity. As for me, I learned that generosity without boundaries becomes a weapon others use against you. I had mistaken silence for kindness, sacrifice for family duty. Now I knew better. 6 months later, I woke at 7:00 a.m. to birdsong instead of demands. I brewed coffee in my kitchen, wearing a robe and slippers, the house quiet and mine again. No footsteps overhead, no clipped voices, no cold eyes measuring whether I was useful. Just peace. My garden bloomed stronger than it had in years. I knelt among the roses one morning, dirt on my hands, and realized how far I had come. I wasn't a victim exiled to a garage. I was a woman who had rebuilt her dignity petal by petal. One evening, as the sun painted the sky in shades of amber and violet, I sat on my back patio with a glass of wine, listening to the wind chimes I had hung without asking anyone's permission. The air smelled of jasmine, clean and free, as if the house itself had been waiting for this moment as long as I had. My phone buzzed with missed calls from an unknown number. I didn't need to listen to the voicemails to know they were Juniper's last desperate attempts to claw back into a life she no longer controlled. I deleted them all with one tap. That chapter was finished. Instead, I opened my laptop and wrote to David, my attorney. I told him I wanted to restore Marcus in my will, but with conditions: steady employment, financial counseling, and a trust structure that would protect him from repeating past mistakes. I also wanted to establish a foundation to help women and seniors escape financial exploitation. If my story could prevent even one person from enduring what I had, then the pain would have meaning. David replied within the hour, as reliable as ever, and we set a meeting for the following week. The days grew richer in small joys. Lunches with friends replaced silent dinners in exile. Book club meetings turned into laughter-filled evenings, no longer shadowed by suspicion or lies. The neighbors who had once believed Juniper's stories now invited me to gatherings, offering apologies that I accepted with grace. Forgiveness wasn't about excusing the lies. It was about freeing myself from their weight. Marcus called more often, sometimes to apologize again, sometimes just to hear my voice. One night, he said softly, "Mom, I'm proud of you. Proud you stood up for yourself. Proud you didn't let us destroy who you are." His words cracked something inside me, but the tears that came were not bitter. They were healing. For the first time in years, I felt my son returning to me, not as a boy who needed guidance, but as a man who could finally see the truth. The lesson had taken me a lifetime to learn. Love without respect is not love at all. Family who exploit your generosity while diminishing your dignity are not acting like family. Peace that comes at the expense of your soul is not peace, it is surrender. At 62, I had discovered it was never too late to reclaim your worth, never too late to teach others how to treat you, and never too late to choose yourself. That night, under a sky bright with stars, I realized I was finally home, not just in my house, but in myself. The freedom I felt was not only in locked doors and reclaimed rooms, but in the knowledge that I no longer needed to apologize for existing, for taking up space, for demanding respect. My life was my own again, and I intended to live every day of it without shrinking to fit anyone else's narrative. If you followed my story to this point, I want to thank you. And I want to ask you, what would you have done in my place? Have you ever faced something similar where kindness was mistaken for weakness? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear it. And if this story touched you, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps more stories like this reach people who might need them. Don't forget to leave a comment with the city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel.